Corin is next in Minnesota. Hi, Corin. How are you?
Hello, Dave and Dr. D. Thank you for taking my call. It's an honor to speak with you today.
You too.
Thank you. So I have a question for you. So I am the spender in the relationship, and I want to work on changing this habit of spending, my feelings of like grief and guilt and shame. And I would like to know how I can do that successfully. So having gone through severe grief and sadness in the past, with suffering the loss of 7 pregnancies within 6 years, I found myself spending money that I felt I deserved to spend with that, to help with that suffering, or so I thought. And so now we've paid off $100,000 in debt in the last 10 months. And a lot of that was credit card debt due to myself. So moving forward, when we're debt-free next March, I don't want to repeat these same habits. So I want to weather those emotional storms, and I want to be able to, come up with better solutions to how I spend. And so I was hoping that you could help me with that today.
Wow.
That's a lot of loss in 6 years.
It is a lot of loss. Yeah, it's devastating to have gone through it.
So, have you mourned the loss of each one of these young lives?
Each. Sometimes they were, further apart, so it gave me time. Sometimes it was compounded within a month or two of each other. We had 7 failed, fertility treatments within that as well.
Wow.
And so I think the compounded grief I was trying to survive, every day. So as time has gone on, it's been better to be able to grieve. So
what I normally tell folks who are what I call have a transfer behavior, they have trauma, they've got loss, they've got heaviness, which loss of pregnancies are. I've experienced this in my own house. They're devastating in a way that because there's that silence and there's that shame and there's that does my body work and there's husband and wives that grieve this differently and it just creates communication chaos, all that, right? When people then move to behaviors that just to distract us, right? Whether that's spending. I would even call, and I hope this doesn't sound sacrilege in this show, there's a chance that you can transfer identity from I'm going to be a mom to loss to the baby steps, right? And at some point, you've got to transfer trust back to your relationship with your husband. You got to transfer trust back to yourself. And that starts with truly grieving what has happened. And 7 pregnancy losses in 6 years, I don't know anybody that can do that by themselves. And so I'd recommend you get a counselor, get a professional, get a pastor that you trust, and do this with your husband and truly grieve the losses of each one of these pregnancies. And then set up a system for yourself coming out of this that makes it very difficult for you to default to your spending habit. In my life, I gave my debit card to my wife for a season. I had to unhook Amazon Prime for a season. But I had to make it hard for myself until I developed these other behaviors that were going to be toward something and not just in response to trying to cover up trauma. But it starts with truly grieving the losses there.
Yeah. I think John's exactly right. As you go through that part of it and you get somebody walking with you in that part and guiding you, then you do put the systems in place, and it can be, and I think the way honestly, your self-awareness, that you just said this all out loud. No one had to figure it out. You've already figured it out. You went, I overspent, I was medicating my hurt, and it brought us $100,000 in debt, and I got shame from that. Now we cleaned that debt up, and I never want to go back. I mean, all of the fact that you can put all of that in about 3 or 4 sentences indicates you're in a really good place.
Way ahead of the curve.
Yeah, because, we didn't have to pull all of that out of you. You laid it all out and just, which means you've already processed it. And your self-awareness is, recognizing there is a problem is 90% of solving one, and you really are there. So then I would make sure you guys are doing a budget and that there are no secret accounts and that every month any spending that he does, any spending that you do, both of you would know about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the only way you did this crap was in secret.
That's right. Yeah. Last August, when I found you, Dave, I went to my husband. You said two things on that first call I listened to. You said, get on the same page with your spouse and stop the bleeding. And I went home that day, and we changed, like 180. We changed our entire financial world.
Yeah, I'm proud of you. You've done great.
What a gift.
Yeah, and if you guys are working the budget together and you are committed to, you're in a contract with your spouse that neither one of you spend money that the other one doesn't know about, and it all shows up on the budget, which, by the way, Dave and Sharon Ramsey do that to this day, and John Deloney and Sheila do that to this day. They do a budget every month. We stick to the budget. We don't spend money that's not on the budget. We don't have any side deals. This is it. And, then that's the accountability. If that's not enough accountability, then you may have to unplug from a couple of things and lean against your husband to carry you through a couple of those things. Like John said, he turned over his debit card. He unplugged and leaned over. And you can do that too if you need to, but I don't know if you're going to need to. I think you got some grief work to do that John suggested and prescribed, and you got that from the doctor here, so you do need to follow that prescription. And then from my perspective, if you'll keep doing what you've been doing since you guys worked on the same page and you don't have any side deals, then I think you're going to be pretty safe, given how self-aware you are. But it's not unusual at all to have someone with a loss. Spending is a socially acceptable drug.
Yeah, it's harder to get off of than cocaine, right?
Yeah.
You don't have cocaine downstairs
Some
in the office.
Some people
right?
crawl in the bottle, and
Right.
that's not as socially acceptable. Some people crawl into other stuff, and it's not. You can't talk about that. But spending is like, I just spent some money. What's the big deal? But you can kind of rationalize it in your head a lot more. And the number of people that medicate grief with spending. We warn, for instance, widows in the loss of a husband, or husbands in the loss of a wife. Widowers, the same thing. Be very, very careful with that, because the number of times I have met with somebody 2 years after the loss and they burned through $400,000 worth of life insurance, and all that was grief spending.
That's right. That's
medication and medicated spending, and that'll burn some money. It'll burn some money, seriously.
And you can't outrun tragedy. You can't outrun grief. It hangs on you, and it hangs on you. You just got to do the hard work and turn around and face it.